Hey guys, it's Selwen here. Today let's talk about the Frosty Boy and how is it playing in BFA in comparison to Legion. And the answer is mostly the same, but with some caveats, as with most specs are in BFA's current design, although there are some good changes. Now, I enjoyed Frost in Legion. Wasn't a super interesting or complex spec. In fact, at first hands, it was a very simple spec indeed, with a lot of you only need 2 fingers to play memes to go around, but even though it was indeed a simple spec, there was always something about it that I enjoyed. Always felt rather fast with constant procs that you're not so dependent on, but keeps you further engaged and makes your rotation overall more interesting and fun. Plus you have your micromanagement of resources to start pushing your DPS, and your abilities all felt satisfying and fun to use. And in general, you were pretty good on dealing damage in any situation, with a pretty good cleave, AoE and single target, although cleave is probably our speciality. Only mobility really dragged us down, and possibly some dungeon utility. Other issues would be things such as having no spender of runic power for AoE and the variety of dead talents. Since in Legion, Frost went through various playstyles and even revamps on talents over patches, and in BFA some of that gets fixed, thankfully. Now to start off, let's talk about main abilities first and see what has changed. Artifact stuff is mostly gone since your ability was so shitty, but we still have our Drogo as a talent. Other traits are basically gone, but some LEGO effects and even tier sets makes a comeback as talents as well. Another big question you might be wondering is, can Frostica use two-handed weapons? Well, technically you can. It just won't work at all, as abilities specifically ask for dual wield. It's even stated on the talents, so QQ on that one. So first on here, on the spellbook, we get Death Grip, which is the same, just has that short global cooldown attached to it, which prevents us using it as we deal damage, which is kinda annoying, but that's the world that we live in. And what I don't mention, by the way, is because the abilities have stayed the same as in Legion, just to save us some time. Death's Advance is our new mobility ability, which basically is just faster walking speed at 30% movement increase and passively prevents us to go below 70% of normal speed or 100% when you use it. Plus makes you immune to knockbacks, much like Pillars of Frost used to do. Because of this, our Wraithwalk was removed from baseline, which is shitty, I know, but also means you get 2 movement abilities. So look on the bright side, even though you're gonna lose some survivability by picking that talent. As for Empower Rune Weapon, has changed quite a bit. The cooldown was reduced to 2 minutes, and to make it more usable in this GCD world, it was basically turned to the way Hungering Rune Weapon talent worked. Sort of, where instead of replenishing all of your runes and giving you some runic power on demand, it's just gonna give you 1 rune and 5 runic power every 5 seconds for 20 seconds. So 4 runes total, but also increases your haste by 15%. So besides the global cooldown on itself, the ability functions in a more interesting way. You no longer have to really wait until you empty of runes and resources to use it, and you can use it more freely, and especially since you also get the haste, so you can also use it as a pure DPS cooldown at the start of fights, for an example, which is really cool to make things overall faster for more procs and even more runes, and haste in Frostica is always welcomed, right? Icebound Fortitude also got a small boost, now reducing damage taken by 30%, up from 20%, and Pillars of Frost, like Empower Rune Weapon, changed quite a bit. Now it's only on a 45-second cooldown, so it's much more frequent, especially when you add the Ice Cap talent, and it's still increasing your strength for more damage at 15% for 15 seconds. But each rune you spend during its duration will increase its strength provided by 1%. So it's gonna further benefit from proper resource management, which, like I said in the beginning, is actually something that you can take advantage of if you play Frost in any serious matter. So players which have mastered that, if you will, gonna benefit from this cooldown more. But even if you're not so into managing your resources, it's still gonna stack up nicely. So you're gonna get 2% extra strength per obliterate. As for your procs, still work the same, such as your Killing Machine, your Rhyme, and your Runic Empowerments, although it's at 1.5% chance now. With all of that said, it still plays for the most part the same. Like I said in the beginning, just your cooldowns are working slightly differently, but core gameplay wise is basically the same, and it's still fun if you into this more simple type of playstyle, and the procs again still keep you engaged and it's overall satisfying to use your abilities, and of course you have that micromanagement of resources if you want to take that extra step. Now let's talk talents, and without any further ado, is the breath style viable or even playable in BFI? Well, there is some synergy, and it works especially due to the new Empower Rune weapon, since their cooldowns now align. But is it as good as it was during Nighthold? Not really, but it is working, at least better than it does currently in Legion, although Azeroth traits kinda pushes us against it, sadly. So on the first tier here, Cold Hearts actually made its way here from the Lego chest, and it's kinda of a bursty ability which Frost kinda lacked. Every 2 seconds is gonna stack up this buff up to 20 times to deal a pretty big hit with Chains of Ice, which is just a slow that you have, costing 1 rune. If you had the Lego chest, you know all about it, works exactly in the same way, and it's usable in any situation really. You're just gonna have to track it to get this big hit out, and not super interesting, but a good addition anyway for just getting those big hits every once in a while. Ice Talons got some pretty good changes. It still is about attack speed buff, stacking 3 times for 6 seconds, 5% per stack. But now it stacks when you use Runic Power abilities, not just Frost Strike, but Cinderosa and the new Glacial Advance. So it's just a great change overall to make this talent more meaningful in the overall scope of your talent choices. On itself, it's just gonna give you a higher chance on Killing Machine procs as they come from auto attack crits, so if you attack faster, there will be a higher chance. The same thing goes for your weapon Rune Forging as well, and the next tier talent Runic Attenuation, which grants 3 runic power per auto attack hit. So some synergy here, although not much to it as talents. Some management at times to keep it up, but nothing overly crazy. You kinda just have it up by doing your normal rotation. And how to say this? Inexorable assault?
Inexorable.
Well, as a talent, it's a little weird. You gain this buff every 8 seconds that stacks up to 5 times, which will then add this extra frost damage to your Obliterate or Frost Sight if you spec into it. Now, for the most part, you're only gonna get 1 stack because it consumes the buff with whatever the amount of stacks you have. So on that is weird, unless there's big intermission phases or huge stops between trash packs. You're never gonna get the buff high enough, unless when you actually start doing the dungeon or the raid or whatever that is what you're doing. But you're still gonna get some extra frost damage on there on Obliterates or Frost Sights, at least 1 stack. Not overly interesting of a talent, nor is it making a lot of sense, and doesn't really have any synergy. So unless the damage is really good for some reason, we're probably gonna stick to the other 2. Second tier, we get the talents just to help with our resources, Runic Attenuation, which I said previously, just for 3 runic power on auto attacks. Not much to it, but combines well with Icy Talons. Murderous Efficiency, the same as in Legion, having a chance to give a rune back when consuming Killing Machine procs. Horn of Winter, again the same, at this time just to get more resources on demand, 2 runes and 25 runic power on a 45-second cooldown. Instead of just getting it passively, you're just gonna use an ability to actively get resources and use whenever you see fit. It works alright, and I guess it combines well with Cinderosa, although it's not a must. Next, you get your utilities, Asphyxiate as your Darth Vader stun, which is pretty cool, Blinding Sleet, disorientating enemies, so kind of like a stun on 1 minute cooldown, and Death Reach for a better grip. Also resetting the cooldown when the mob wields experience or honor, so great in dungeons, just for more grips. Next, we get some AoE choices, Avalanche as an easy passive choice, Howling Blast with Rhyme procs, cause extra frost damage with icicles falling on enemies. alright, it looks cool, but it's a passive. Frozen Pulse to passively AoE on auto attacks when below 3 runes. So again, that resource play kinda comes in with this talent, plus benefits highly from icy talents, just to get more auto attacks, to get more pulses. So because of that, it's also perfectly usable in single target as well, just for some little extra damage. And then the obligatory Frostbite for Big Dick AoE. I don't really need to talk about these talents, do I? It's still freaking cool for those big hits, still satisfying as ever. Next we get our defensives, Permafrost giving you a shield based on auto attack damage, our classic Wraithwalk, which I know is a shitty choice, but it lasts for 4 seconds now with 70% movement speed, but is on a 1 minute cooldown, and Deathpack as a big cooldown heal, working much like we used to do with Icebound plus Death Strike shenanigans with the trait. Then we get another AoE-ish tier choice, Gathering Storm, which is more used for single targets, but is still improving your Remorseless Winter and increasing its duration per rune used, but the damage increase was nerfed from 15% to 10%. Gameplay-wise, working all the same, so not much to say about it. Glacial Advance as your way to AoE by using Runic Power, 30 to be exact, on a 5-second cooldown, and also applies your Razor Eyes weapon debuff. Now, this is feeling like a must for dungeons. Gathering Storm is alright, but like in Unholy with Epidemic, Glacial Advance is kind of fixing the issue where we didn't had anywhere to dump Runic Power in AoE, just Frost Strikes, but that's a single target ability, or Breath of Cinderosa, but that's a big cooldown. With Glacial Advance, it fixes it. So we're just gonna be doing Frost Sights in AoE, then Glacial Advances, while mixing in Obliterates and Frost Strikes, and then going back to Frost Sights when you get the proc, and then Glacial Advance. So it's a really great addition overall. Really happy to see this ability getting some use, and remember, it can also proc Icy Talents, so you can keep that attack speed buff up even in AoE for more killing machines, which in turn can give you more Frost Sight. So great synergy overall that we have here. And then you still have your big dragon burst on a 3-minute cooldown, now called Frostworm Fury. Even though it's really cool, in single targets you're probably gonna still be taking Gathering Storm, right? I mean, I'm not checking the numbers or anything because that can change, but seems quite logical, and Glacial Advance is a way to go for dungeons for more sustained type of AoE. It's just too good, right? So Frostworm Fury just here for big AoE burst, which is alright, even though I know it's really freaking cool, but I'm only seeing us take this for burst, which is quite niche. And then on the last tier we actually get pretty decent choices. I mean, in the end, all of these three will come down to numbers on live to see what will work best, but we get Ice Cap here, where Frost Strikes and Obliterates will reduce the cooldown of Pillars of Frost for every critical strike by 1 second. So same as in Legion, just as a last tier talent now. Pillars of Frost on itself is already really short of a cooldown, right? Even more now with 45 seconds. With this, you're gonna get it every 20 to 30 seconds, which is quite insane how fast you get it. Gameplay-wise, not much is gonna change, though. It's just gonna be doing your 2-button rotation pretty much with your procs, and then manage your resources and stuff like that to make the most out of it. Either talent combos like Runic Attenuation or Murderous Efficiency seem to work well. So again, how good this will be will kind of depend on the other talent choices in terms of numbers on live, and it can also work pretty good in dungeons, since the cooldown can also be reduced from Frostbite crits. But Obliteration just works so much better. Now, it was baked onto Pillars of Frost itself, the ability itself, because of the global cooldown changes to the overall game, but still works all the same. Frost Strike and Howling Blast, even the new Glacial Advance, will grant you a Killing Machine proc, but instead of making Obliterate cost 1 less rune, just has a 40% chance to give another rune back. So you're still gonna go on that rotation of Frost Strike, Obliterate with the occasional Howling Blast, Obliterate, but now through the whole duration of Pillars of Frost, which, you know, it's fine. I was never a fan of Obliteration, but it's basically the same thing, but it is more present since it lasts for much longer now with the whole duration of Pillars of Frost. Now, in AoE is much more fun because you can get a lot of Frost Sights, especially with the recent change to Glacial Advance to work with it. It makes your AoE in dungeons really goddamn fun, on just going for a lot of frost sight, so it gets quite bursty. Needless to say, Murderous Efficiency is gonna work with this talent overall, since you get loads of killing machines, so that's gonna proc quite frequently. But this talent overall gives you a lot of runes as well, so the only downside of it is making Frozen Pulse less effective for single targets. But hey. Now, as for Breath of Cindergrosa, was one of my favorite playstyles of Frost in Legion. It had its issues, but just felt super satisfying, and after its time in the sun during Nighthold, it was completely broken. Currently in BFA, it is usable, and in more situations than in Antoros. The new Empower rune weapon helps a lot by the cooldowns aligning, and there's actually talent synergy to make it work, with Icy Talents working with any runic power consuming abilities, so it's just gonna stay up permanently while Breath is up. Then you also get Horn of Winter, or even the new runic attenuation. But it doesn't feel like it will be this dominant force like it used to be during Nighthold, but maybe we can find some niche fights to use it, like cleave sort of fights. In dungeons it feels way too clunky with talents that you need to get for it to work, and the cooldown is just too long, so it just doesn't work all that nicely, since you kinda want more sustained type of AoE, like you get with Frost Sights, Glacial Advances, and then with Obliteration, like I said previously. So overall, Frost, it's good. It does feel slower than in Legion, and a large portion of that, I guess, it's just a gearing issue. When we get to max level with decent haste values and stuff, I imagine it gets better. But the other issue that makes us feel slower is just the global cooldown. Sure, Obliteration was baked in Pillars of Frost, but between Pillars itself and the new Empower rune weapon, it really breaks the fast flow that the spec had in Legion. I mean, it's fine, we just gonna have to get used to it. But yeah, it does make us feel slightly slower. That said, the changes to the abilities themselves, the cooldowns, are pretty good, making them more interesting and more usable in this global cooldown world that we live in. As for AoE, it's still good as ever, but still quite based on procs. It's not a huge deal, but you get Howling Blast, a proc, Frost Sight, not a proc, but you mostly want to use it on procs. Glacial Advance is not a proc and is a great addition to dump our runic power in AoE, much like Epidemic in Unholy, but isn't spammable. At the same time, you do get a lot of choices and decisions to make in your talents, and I'm looking forward to know when everything is tuned and what playstyle we're gonna get. Will it be Ice Cap? Will it be Obliteration? Will it be Cindergrosa? As right now, it's kinda hard to pinpoint. As for survivability, it's still largely the same with your magic shells and icebounds. It's pretty decent and you can get a few talents to gain some more. Utility still isn't the best, Unholy does get more on that front due to the pet. Here you just get slows, a singular stun, and that's about it. You do have Blinding Sleep though. And of course you do bring your grip, which is great in dungeons and the combat rest. Mobility, like I said in the Unholy vid, I do feel it's better because you do get a choice of getting 2 movement abilities, although for you to take one you're gonna suffer on defensives, so yeah. Anyway guys, do let me know what you all think of BFA's Frosty Boy. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to get more beta videos, and check out my Patreon if you wish to support the channel. As always, thank you for watching, have a fantastic day everyone, and I'll see you all next time. See ya!